Hello, everyone. I'm doing a new podcast, Back to the Boleyn, and this is the first one that I'm going to do. And I'm joined by Gatesy from Forge from Irons. I'm basically it's a show dedicated to memories and good times at our beloved bowling ground, Upton Park. And I'm joined by Gatesy today. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, thank you, James. Thanks for having me along. I'm honoured to be the first one. Hopefully, won't be the
Yeah,
last.
yeah. If you're the last, then it's gone down like a lead balloon. But
I'll take the rap for that, mate. Don't worry,
yeah,
I'll take the rap.
nah, that's fine, mate. That's fine. But this show is basically about talking about how it all began, really, for yourself, really, mate. And first of all, you become a West Ham fan, and then like the rise from becoming a West Ham fan to start going to games and up to the current day, basically. So, where did it all begin for you, Gatesy?
It began about 11 years before I was even born, believe it or not. My family are from a little part of southeast London called Kennington, which for anyone that isn't quite sure where that is, if you've heard of the Oval Cricket Ground, it's round by there. In fact, I used to go to school literally behind the Oval Cricket Ground when I was a kid. So in 1964, my dad was looking for a football team to support. Now, everybody around that particular part of London at the time were either Millwall fans, Chelsea fans, the occasional Arsenal fan. My granddad was an Arsenal fan. But my granddad never ever forced my dad into supporting Arsenal. He was quite relaxed about it. The only thing that my granddad told my dad when my dad was asking who should I support, he turned around and said, "Don't mind who you support, boy, but make it a London team. Has to be a London team." So my dad's sort of like mulling it over who he should support. Lo and behold, West Ham win the FA Cup in 1964, and that was that. He was a West Ham fan, and off of the back of that, I'm a West Ham fan. My brother's a West Ham fan. My kids are all West Ham fans. And as far as I'm concerned, my grandkids are going to be West Ham fans, whether they like it or not. And it's as simple as that. So I often wonder what would have happened if Preston had won that day. Which direction my dad might have taken. Would he have still supported West Ham? Would he have found another club? As far as I'm concerned, it's a real sliding doors moment potentially, because it could have completely altered where the course of the team I'd have supported.
But, yeah. Do you think, like, obviously the '66 World Cup? Do you think a lot of that is to do with sort of people going to West Ham from different parts of the country?
Yeah, I think for a certain generation of people, I think possibly for kids now, not so much, because obviously, I think it's very much a generational thing. But I think that certainly if you were around the time of the '66 World Cup and you were sort of like possibly, I don't know, maybe in rural Shropshire or something like that, where there's not exactly lots of football teams around, I don't think, other than maybe Shrewsbury Town or something like that. And you saw sort of like 3 players from the same club winning the World Cup. Who's to say that there isn't a load of people off the back of that supported West Ham? I mean, I've seen all sorts of people that support West Ham that have no obvious connection to the club, and you sit there and think, well, where did that come from? And I'm sure that there's a vast quantity of West Ham fans that became West Ham fans off of the back of that, either directly or indirectly through their parents.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I really do. And that's why I'm doing this sort of like podcast sort of show type vibe, because I want to see, because I'm seeing from Twitter, from YouTube, I'm seeing people from different parts of the country, and me personally being a local person who's like got born and bred, I've got Cockney parents and all that. It's a pleasure, it's a privilege really to sort of see these people that are coming from. Some people are coming from like different countries to come and fly in and see West Ham, and that just baffles me really. It does. Like, and for me, it's like a 20-minute, not even 20-minute, 15-minute train journey to Upton Park. But
and the funny thing is, James, didn't you think that sort of like you can understand it when you sort of like you have people going to Old Trafford, going to Anfield, going to Stamford Bridge, because these are clubs that traditionally, over the last sort of, in some cases, the last 50, 60, 70 years, have been clubs that have been winning things left, right, and centre. And yet you've got people that are turning up at, obviously, at Upton Park back in the day and London Stadium now, that are coming from far-flung places, and you're sitting there thinking, you could have supported anyone. Why are you supporting us? We don't win anything. But it's one of those things that sort of like when it gets you, and you get what the club means, then you're hooked, and it doesn't matter where you come from. If you're claret and blue, that's all that matters.
Yeah, do you know what? And that's what I'm noticing with different platforms that I'm seeing it on, and that's why I've come up with this. I think the camaraderie and the togetherness of the fans has always been the same with us. We all sort of stand together, and we all suffer the same as much as we celebrate the same. If that makes sense, like as you say, we don't win nothing, but we are a sort of team that we give everything, and we expect as a fan base, we don't expect nothing, so we're not always disappointed. But there's obviously been times where we have been very disappointed. But But leading on to my first question that I've got for you, I've got 5 questions for you today, mate. Where was your first seat at the Boleyn ground, and did you ever change to a different stand?
When I got my first season ticket, I was Bobby Moore lower. I couldn't tell you the row or the seat number. All I can tell you is it was lower tier. We would always be, because when I got my first season ticket, it was with my best mate and me. And the seat that we had was, if you can imagine, obviously the goal's in front of you. So the goal was always to my left. And I was about 5 rows or so from the front. So a lot of the time when the players would score, they'd sometimes come running over and they'd be celebrating sort of like literally a matter of feet from where we were sat. So, so Bobby Moore lower was always my wherever I went when I had the season ticket. Before I had the season ticket, I'd be sort of like here or there or whatever. But the Bobby Moore lower was just it was full of all sort of like the real hardcore West Ham fans, just lunatics, if I'm being honest, which was probably why I was there.
Yeah. Is there anywhere else that you sat though, or is it just always been in the Bobby Moore?
As I say, as far as the season ticket was concerned, my season ticket over the years was always Bobby Moore lower. Once I occasionally had sort of games before I had a season ticket, where I might be somewhere else. Like I think I've had a couple of games. I don't think I ever saw a game in the Trevor Brooking stand. I don't think at any point. I did have. I did go in the Rio stand, the Alpari stand, Dr. Martin stand. Call it what you want. I was in that stand maybe for a couple of games, and I did once go to a game where I was in the East Upper, but as I say, all my season tickets, all Bobby Moore lower. It was just one of those things that I just enjoyed being amongst it, all the singing and like I say, a lot of the banter that was going on, sort of some of the things you'd hear, it would be like, oh my God, sort of thing, where did that come from? But yeah, I loved it in the Bobby Moore lower. And to be honest, I would have never had a season ticket anywhere else.
No, that's good, mate. That's really good. Like me personally, I was in the Trevor Booking lower, but I was right on the U bend, right on the corner as it sort of meets with the Dr. Martin stand, Betway stand, whatever you want to call it. But I was sort of right on the corner, basically right near the corner flag, really. But it was on the corner flag going up. I was round there. And I used to like it because he was right near the away fans, but he was far enough away, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Did you give him a little bit of stick, did you?
Oh, you know me, mate.
Good lad.
You know me
Good
too.
Lad.
You know me too well. But I've got
go.
another one. I've got another one for you, mate. Did you ever have a pre-match ritual for each game?
Not
or did you
really.
ever do?
Not
Or did you ever
really.
do anything on the day that you sort of went, you know what, I'm going to go and have pie and mash, or I'm going to go and have a beer, or whatever?
Probably most of my rituals were more post-match, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Certainly, once we had the kids, I'd always go to Nathan's after the game because sort of like we was Bobby Moore lower. The final whistle went, and we could just sort of like we could be at Nathan's pretty much before 90% of the rest of the stadium. So we'd always get in there, get a seat, sit down, and I mean, because you must have been to Nathan's. Walking into Nathan's, it was like sort of like you walked in, it was like a sort of little segment of the 1970s that had been preserved in its, for posterity. It was, but that was one of the things that actually made it for me, because it was a beautiful little place. I mean, some people thought it was a little bit tired and past its sell by date, but I actually quite liked that. That sort of
It was the old school
vibe,
wasn't it?
yeah,
It was the old school
definitely.
vibe.
That's
Yeah,
what made it. It was
yeah,
beautiful.
and it's.
Such a
I
shame it's
think
not there anymore.
I think if you would have if it would have modernised it, it just wouldn't have been the same to me.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but it's like when you walked in there, you felt like it sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You felt sort of like, and if it would have been like fancy tiles and like a brand new state of the art one, it just I don't think it would have been the same.
Yeah, I love my pie and mash, and I've been to all sorts of pie and mash shops all around London and wherever, and I always like that sort of like the marble tables, or the sort of like the wooden bench seats, and just that old school feel. If they was to try and sort of modernize it and make it look 2021 version of it, nah, sorry, just doesn't work for me.
Kent said to me, Chav's corner, James.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Don't worry though. Don't worry, mate. But we was always vocal as much as the next person. I mean, it's a bit harder if you're already in the Bobby Moore lower or upper or anything. But no, listen, I enjoyed that.
Bobby Moore lower was always quite tuneful, I got to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, pre-match rituals, I didn't tend to have too many. Not really. Sort of like it would tend to be sort of depending on the time, sort of thing. I might pop into one of the pubs on the way, but a lot of the time, by the time I got there, it would just be packed, and by the time I'd get sort of like to the front of the queue, it'd be like, oh well, it's 2:45 sort of thing. I've got to get going, so it was a waste of time. So pre-match rituals not tend to happen with me. Even now, sort of like I'll sort of like just turn up, go in. Most of my rituals tend to come afterwards.
Yeah, that's good, mate. That's good. Do you know what I mean? Ken, I do love Chav's corner, mate. That's what I'm going to say. I was one of the boys. Right. The best game you saw at the Boleyn.
Now we see this is it's like you're asking me who's my favourite child, James. There's so many I can choose from. Okay, let's pick a few of them out. The first game I ever went to, 10-0 versus Bury, our record victory. Imagine that. Your first game is still to this day your record victory. So that has to be in there, because that's where it all started as far as going to the Boleyn was concerned. The 5-4 game against Bradford. I mean, that game had everything.
Yeah,
literally.
I was there that game.
Yeah,
I was there that game. And Di Canio was like, I think he had been fouled 3 times and should have had 3 penalties. And he started sulking, didn't he?
He did. Yeah, he literally just sort of went down on his haunches and was just like, "I no play. You'll sub me off. No play." Beautiful, but it was. I mean, it was it's just absolutely crazy game. I think we were 2-0 up, and then Shaka
was 4-2 down at half time.
Yeah,
it was 4-2 down.
They brought on Steve Bywater for his debut, who looked so nervous. It was ridiculous. 4-2 down, and I believe, because there was only 2 seasons that Bradford were in the Premier League. They had one season where they survived, and then the next season where they got relegated. And I can't remember if this was the season they survived or got relegated. But either way, this was a team that we should have beat. I don't think there's any argument over that. And we're sitting there and it's like, we're 4-2 down. What the hell's going on? And like you say, when Parlo went down and was just like, I don't want to know sort of thing, you're just sitting there thinking, well, this could be really embarrassing. And then the comeback, he had the argument with Frank over who was going to take the penalty. He won that. And then was it Joe Cole and Frank Lampard that scored the next 2 goals?
I think Lampard scored. I don't think Joe Cole might have been. I don't know. I don't think so though. I'll be wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe Kent can tell me in the chat who scored the goals. But
I'm fairly sure it was Moncur that got the first, and it was like he hit the shot and he was falling at the same time. I seem to remember it. It flew past the goalkeeper. I think might have been Matt Clark or Aidan Davison. I think it was Matt Clark in the Bradford goal that day. But yeah, I mean that game just had 9 goals. You're going to see a goal every 10 minutes on average, but it's not going to be for the same team. It's not going to be like a 9-0 win. It's like, I'm not being funny, a 9-0 win is nice, but it's quite boring. Do you know what I mean? It's just so one-sided. It's like, what's the point? Whereas this was a 9-goal thriller, 5-4. You're like, I mean, the only thing that was missing was probably a sending off. But that was the only thing that game didn't have. I mean, the game literally had everything else. A team going in the lead, then the other team coming back, and then the fight back again the other way, and a keeper being injured, and another keeper making his debut, and a player having a strop, and just an argument over the penalty. I mean, that was just comical. It's me. No, it's mine. No, I want it. No, it's mine. Just nuts. Absolutely nuts. But I've just seen Kent's, because that was actually one of the other games I was going to mention, Kent. The Ipswich playoff semi-final, where the noise that night was just ridiculous. I would put that and the last game in the same category for atmosphere. I mean, it was just the atmosphere that night. It was literally, you could cut it with a knife. I kid you not. I mean, I don't know if you was there, James, but it was just noise.
I think it was more to the point that it was so important.
Yes,
it was so important, and it was like if I correct me if I'm wrong, but we lost the first leg. I think Darren Bent scored the goal up in Ipswich, and we was 1-0 down. If I was not mistaken, and
that's right.
All the fans were like, we need to turn up tonight, sort of thing, and they did, and it was just phenomenal. But it was a phenomenal display. But I'll give you one of my personal ones is the Manchester United League Cup game when we won 4-0.
I missed that.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was good. Alex Ferguson and
that was in the snow, wasn't it?
That was in the snow. Victor Urbina scored, and I think Jonathan Spector scored. I think if Kent could confirm it.
Cole got 2. I thought Cole got 2 and Spector got 2.
I'm sure.
Kent will jump in a minute.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but I'm sure. All I remember is Victor Urbina on running away, but whether he jumped on someone, I don't know. But no Spector, because I remember it. Do you know what I mean? He was that's the only time he ever done anything. Victor Urbina, but
pretty much. But that Ipswich game was quite funny, because I remember turning up. I had my season ticket, my same seat, and 2 rows in front of me was my younger brother who'd managed to get a ticket, and he didn't have a clue where my season ticket was. I've sort of turned up, and I'm like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Well, I'm here to watch the football. What are you doing here?" I'm like, "This is my bloody season ticket seat. Well, I've been here for the last sort of like however many years." So and it was I mean, the first half we battered them from what I remember. I mean, their player of the match was Kelvin Davis, who was pulling off saves left, right, and centre. And then you get in at 0-0, and you're thinking, well, we got to turn this round. We've got 45 minutes. And when Matty got that goal, the corner, Carrick just sort of cut it back. He's put it onto his left foot, cut inside, bang, into the top corner, and just the explosion of noise. It was just incredible. And then Daly got the winner, who took one in the knackers just as he was about to sort of pull the trigger. And I think it took a deflection on its way, went in. We didn't care. If it went in off of someone's backside, it wouldn't make any difference. And obviously we didn't turn up in the final, but that's another story.
But to sort of reverse that question, what's the worst game you've seen West Ham? Like, what's the heartbreaking game that you would say you was there and you was like, I think for me personally, it was the Tottenham game when they won 4-3. I think it's 06-07 season, or
Yeah. Well, Nobes was
the
in tears
season.
there, wasn't he?
Yeah, the Great Escape season,
Yeah.
and that to me was heartbreaking because we was 3-2 up. Obviously, Zamora scored, then they equalised with Berbatov, and then Paul Salteri
Salteri,
scored the
yeah.
winner. Yeah, and it was like
Yeah.
that's just relegated us basically, but we sort of
But the
managed to
thing
get
is, I
round it.
think that result, in a funny sort of way,
Yeah,
was a part of the reason why we got out of it, because I think at that moment, everybody thought we're dead. And I
yeah,
think at that point, it was a bit of a release, if that makes sense. A bit of pressure had been taken off because I think that from that point, they just thought, well, look, we might as well just go out. There's no pressure. We think we're down. Everybody else thinks we're
mm,
down. We probably are down. So let's just go out there and express ourselves and play. And then I think, what was it? We won 7 out of our last 9.
yeah. Yeah, we went on a mad run. Beat
Yeah.
Arsenal, obviously beat Man
Yeah.
United. There was
I mean, in
some mental
terms of the
games in them.
worst game I've ever seen, worst game, I remember when we was in, I think it was the season, or there was 2 seasons we was in the Championship under, obviously, Roda to begin with, and then Pardew.
Mm,
I seem to have a recollection we played a midweek game, and I can't remember. It might have been Stoke, it might have been Sheffield United. I can't remember. It was one of those two. I think it was a boring 0-0 draw. It was just like, I mean, it's no exaggeration to say, I think it was probably, if I'd have watched paint dry, that would have been more exciting than this game. It was awful, absolutely awful. If it was a case of picking a game that emotionally wrecked me,
mm,
yeah, probably that 4-3 game against Spurs is probably in there.
mm,
And probably for another reason, I'm going to pick a win. I'm going to
mm.
pick the Chelsea 2000, when we beat Chelsea in Di Canio's last game at Upton Park.
Yeah,
That
yeah, that's a
probably,
good one.
that was emotional for a different reason, because we won and it gave us that little bit of hope. And obviously it was Di Canio's last game and he was coming round and he was in tears, and
Mm,
um but you sort of like 6 days later, well, 8 days later rather, we obviously went down at St Andrews. So that was emotional in a different way. But
yeah,
yeah,
I remember
so
that game.
there's quite a few. There's
Yeah,
quite a few I could pick.
I remember that game because that was the games that sort of spurred us. Like the 1-0, he scored the goal. The crowd was
Mm,
like vibing and everything. And yeah, it was like a chance to get out of it. And obviously we didn't. And I must
yeah.
admit, that season, that 03 season when we went down, oh mate, I never cried so much in all my life.
Well,
I must admit, I was
I
in bits.
that season, I started the season. I missed the first home game of the season, which was the 2-2 draw against Arsenal,
Mm,
because on that day I was
mm,
getting married. And then by the time we got to the last home game of the season, which was the Chelsea game, sitting with me, and I've got in trouble for this.
mm,
Those of you that are watching will know that I got in trouble for this because I called my wife something, which
mm,
has rebounded on me quite heavily. So I'm not going to repeat that statement. But my wife was very heavily pregnant with twins at this point. So so
mm.
my first game I missed because I was getting married. The last game of the season, my wife's now sitting next to me, heavily pregnant with twins. So yeah, that was quite an interesting season, sort of like both for me personally and in terms of that season, because you look at that squad, it was like David James, England's goalkeeper, Paolo Di
Yeah.
Canio, the best player I ever saw live in claret and blue, Trevor Sinclair, who had a magnificent World Cup in 2002,
Mm.
you know, Joe Cole, Michael Carrick, Jermaine Defoe. How the hell did that team get relegated? Someone tell
Yeah,
me.
well, I know, 42 points, mate. I know. Which makes
Mad.
it even worse. Do you know what I mean? But moving on to this one, and you talking about favourite players, you come to my next question. Favourite player you see at the Boleyn?
Oh, again, you're asking me a who's your favourite child question, James. I mean, like I say, Di Canio was the best player I think I saw in claret and blue live. I think if Payet had have stayed a bit longer, I think he'd have seriously challenged him. But I think because Di Canio was there longer.
Let's look at it this way, Rob. Who was your favourite player when you first started? Who was your favourite player when you sort of started going regularly? And then who was your favourite player towards the end of it, so to speak?
I loved Tony Cottee right from the get-go because he scored 4 goals in the first game I ever saw. And, you know, he was not the top goal scorer in obviously the 85-86 season, but he was only a couple of goals behind Macca. But he was sort of, you know, all the way through. And even when he went away to Everton, came back, he was still scoring goals, maybe not at the same volume, the same rate as he did when he was in the first time at the club. But Cottee, I always idolised. Julian Dix was another player that, you know, to me, he didn't care. Do you know what I mean? I heard all sorts of stories about, you know, he hated training, you know, sort of like doing cross country and things like that. And he'd be one of the people at the stragglers at the back sort of thing. He didn't really sort of like turn up for training, but put him in a shirt, put him out on the pitch, totally different ball game. You know, he was, you know, absolute beast of a player, you know. Yeah, I mean, see, again, I've seen different sort of eras in my time at the Boleyn. At the end, I'd say, and again, what I'm about to say might be controversial, but I'm talking about what I witnessed in that last season. Dimitri Payet was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I honestly, as I say earlier, I think if he'd have stayed for a couple more seasons, as I say, the best player I ever saw technically was Di Canio. I think if Payet had have stayed and have replicated that for another couple of seasons, I might have been saying that Payet was the superior player. As I say, Tony Cottee was my first favourite player, Dixie. But you know what? There was one player that I actually quite liked, and this might be a bit of a curveball, but I actually quite liked Ian Pearce.
Oh, I don't know about that one.
No, I'll tell you, I thought he was really underrated. I mean, he could play centre back, he could play up front. I think I remember one time, I'm fairly sure he played as a wing back against Leeds in a 3-0 win, and I think he scored. I liked Ian Pearce. He was one of them players that I don't think got the credit that he actually deserved, in my opinion.
Yeah, for me personally, it was Dix for me. That was the first person in like 95, 96. I'll never forget the game against Man City. I think it is. He hit a rocket from outside the box, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget it. I used to get the VCR like season review. Go into the shop or like buy it from somewhere. And basically get the end of season sort of goals that you do on YouTube, and you see it on now sort of thing. So yeah, he was up there. I used to like another player who was not really a big mention, but I thought he was very good for us. He's Michael Hughes, Northern Irishman. Yeah, I used to like him.
Got that goal in the 1-1 draw in '95, didn't he?
Yeah,
the game
and
where
he's one player though, Rob. No one really mentions like sort of thing, but he was in that sort of team that was pretty good. Obviously, Ian Bishop was good. Then as you move on, you got Di Canio and players like I liked Canute growing up.
Yeah,
Canute was a good player, and obviously you had that sort of youth element of the team.
What do you think about John Moncur? Because I think he's one of them players that a lot of people don't instantly say. But then when you mention his name, the people then go, "Oh, actually, do you know what? He was actually pretty decent as well." You know, I think he's one of them players that went under the radar.
But I think there was more players who get the limelight more than him, if that makes sense. Like there'd be people like Steve Lomas, for instance, who was like an unsung hero sort of thing. He would give 100%, throw his body in front of absolutely anything, like his face would go in front of anything. And obviously, when you look at sort of players in that sort of era, like especially in the 03 and then going up, and then obviously Dean Ashton, me personally, I thought was one of the best strikers that we've had at the club in my lifetime. You know, I mean, obviously I see Cottee, I see Dowie, I see Paul Kitson, I see John Hartson. Like these players were top draw, but I thought Ashton was like I think if he don't get injured, he would have been like Harry Kane, because I thought he was phenomenal. I really did. I thought he had everything. Good, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Just seen Kent's made a comment in the chat there, James. I don't know if you want to just
Yeah.
put it out about Dixon Macca. Did you
Yeah.
ever hear that story?
No, I didn't. But you can tell
Apparently,
me.
the story goes that they were doing, and I think Kent, if I get this wrong, Kent, please feel free to correct me. But I think the story goes is that they were doing like pre-season training, I think around Hainault, if I remember rightly, and McAvenny and Dix were right at the back, and sort of like everybody else was sort of like in the distance. And apparently Billy Bonds would come running back and say, "Come on, you two, get a move on." And then he'd shoot off again, and then he'd come back and come on, for Christ's sake. And eventually he just left them to it. And they're just plodding along. And I think that the story goes that a milk float went trundling past, the old school milk floats on, the battery ones. Yeah, he's just put it in the chat there. Milk float comes trundling along, and they turn around and say, "Excuse me, mate, can you give a lift?" And apparently he was a West Ham fan, and he's gone, "Yeah, no problem, boys." So they've got in amongst the crates, sort of hiding down. And I believe that Billy Bonds had people stationed at certain waypoints along the way, and I think Paul Hilton, was the one that was at Chadwell Heath, and he's apparently got off. They've got off of the milk float, and sort of gone in and sort of like was like, "Oh." And Billy Bonds has sort of like seen them and sort of like, "Oh, well done," sort of thing. And then he was talking to Paul Hilton later, and Paul Hilton was like, "Well, they never come past me. What's going on?" sort of thing. And yeah, so they cheated a little bit.
just a bit. But before we wrap up the show, I know this is going to be another question for you, Gatesy, because I mean, but the best memory of the Boleyn ground for you. What memory stands out in your mind to say that, you know what, that will stay with you forever?
Oh, I hate you, James.
I know, mate. I'm here all week.
Probably for the emotion, I'm going to have to go the last game. I'm going to have to go the last game because I was there with my daughter. I could only. I'm lucky now because of obviously the prices and all the rest of it. I can now get 4 season tickets, me and my 3 kids. At the time, I could only get an adult and a child ticket, and we rotated it. And this particular season, because my boys had been to the last game of the season, the previous 2 seasons, so she came with me for this one. And obviously, it's against Manchester United. We're in the hunt for a Champions League space. This is the last game at the Boleyn. All of these things. I'm there with my daughter, and we win it late on from 2-1 down. The closing ceremony. I'm there with Miguel, and just leaving that night and knowing that I'm never going to do it again. Do you know what I mean? It's just like the finality that this is it.
How hard was that night, in your opinion? Yeah,
broke my heart.
Yeah.
Broke my heart. And I think I sort of told the story on one of the other streams where I left that night, and I said to myself, "I'm never coming back here, because it's not going to be here, number one, but I'm never going to make the effort to come back and just see an area where once upon a time was a place that meant so much to me." And there was a twist of fate that kind of took me back there through work, and I went back there, and there was all these flats there, and if these flats had been anywhere else, James, I could have just looked at it and gone, "Oh, they're rather nice. It's a nice little development you've got there." But because of where it was, I just looked at it and I just shook my head. I was just like, yeah. And it's I completely accept that you need to move on, and everything has its time. But we've moved into an athletic, and I know I'm going off on a slight tangent here, but just the thing of, you know, we're moving into a bigger stadium. Okay, fine, I buy into that. You know, the club's got to grow. I completely accept that. But you've moved into an athletic stadium, and in my opinion, I don't think that really does us an awful lot of credit. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Me personally, like obviously the last game will always be a memory, but there's a couple of games there, but obviously the playoff game is the one for me. Like obviously the last game was good, but the playoff semi-final was powerful. Obviously the Millwall game in 2009 was for all the wrong reasons, but it was a memory that it was the most unbelievable night ever, like that. You know what I mean? Ever. And obviously, there's been a few good FA Cup games there. The one that hurt me is in '97, was when Samasia Moon missed a penalty against Arsenal in the FA Cup. That was a one that sort of stuck it in me, so to speak. But other than that, there's been some good times there. There's obviously good games, so to speak, and obviously, I think the last game against Tottenham at the Boleyn was a big one.
Antonio header, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1-0, and it was one of them ones where we was like, we cannot lose this game. Like this is this is a must not lose game, like especially against them. And it was just there's a few good memories there, mate. But
there's lots. I mean, as I say, it's one of those best memory of the Boleyn. It's kind of a difficult question because, as I say, there's some. As I say, you're right. The playoff semi-final against Ipswich in 03-04 was, like I say, as far as atmosphere is concerned, that and the Man United game, the last game, atmosphere-wise, I really can't separate them. I think that the reason that maybe the last game trumps it slightly is because of the fact it was the last game and the emotion around it. The bit I found quite, like I say, the final moment when they had that thing with Bobby Moore switching off the lights on the screen. He's flicked the switch, and then at that moment the lights did go off. Was just like, that's it.
Yeah,
you know, I've been coming here for, at that point, 30 odd years, and I'm going to leave here with my daughter, and I ain't never coming back.
Yeah, and do you know what? To end it on that sort of note, you started off as a young lad going to West Ham, and you end it with being a father, so to speak. So it's like one of them things that you can sort of look back and go, I was there. I started off being a boy, coming to the ground, and now I've left being a father and a dad and husband, etc. And do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like obviously, it's just sort of like this podcast is basically to look back, and when you look back on them sort of memories, you can, at least you've got their memories for your lifetime. Do you know what I mean? So, and your child's lifetime, so to speak, to say that they was there the day it went, and obviously,
well, that's it. I mean, it's quite nice that my kids have all got a memory. Not as many memories as I've got, obviously, but they went to a good many games there themselves. I mean, I've got photographs of the first game that I ever took my sons to, which was the season we went down under Avram, and we played Burnley in the FA Cup. I think we won 5-1, and I've got a photograph of my two sons, who would have been 7 or so at the time, with John Hartson.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So memories like that will stay.
Memories,
that's what I'm saying. They'll stay with forever. But that brings us to the end, mate. Rob, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. I've really enjoyed this one. I really have, and
thanks.
I like your insight.
For asking me.
Do you know what I mean? And took you a bit down memory lane, and it's been a good one, mate. And I really appreciate you coming. I really appreciate you coming on. You can find Rob at Forge from Irons. Go over there to your YouTube channel.
Don't subscribe to us, because if we get up to 300 subscribers, I've got to wear a Gloria from Madagascar fancy dress outfit. So anyone that's watching, if you want to subscribe and take us to 299, that's fine. But can you please all stop there? Because otherwise I've got to humiliate myself. And you don't want to do that to a grown man, do you?
No, obviously not. I mean, but they're doing good work over there. Do a good few shows in a week, and they've got their own sort of show going down memory lane of different years, different generations, and all that. They do a show on Tuesday night that I'm involved in. It's like a talk show, basically opinion show, and they're doing good stuff. And it's been a pleasure, Rob. I really appreciate your time, mate, and thanks for coming on.
Always my pleasure.
And that is the first one of Back to the Boleyn podcast, basically, and it's been a total pleasure, mate. I really it has, and I hope to get more people on there because I like to hear what their thoughts of it, because it may be gone, but in my eyes, it will never be forgotten. And
it will never be gone, James. I'll just end it on this, mate, if I may. The bowling ground will never ever be gone. All the time, there are people that remember it. It's here, and it's here.
And I can't agree more with that. So but thanks for watching anyway, people, and subscribe if you can, mate. And I appreciate it. It helps me out greatly, and it helps the channel out greatly. And I'll catch up again with you soon. Take care.